Arcane this, arcane that, everyone's been loving Arcane. And me included. I love a good backstory for a game. And you might be thinking, what is Eternal Return's backstory? Most of the player base doesn't actually know. This is literally all the lore they give on Eternal Return. They say, on the deserted Lumia Island, the seedy organization known as Alglea is conducting secret experiments on human subjects in a bid to perfect a new race of extraordinary humans. While this does do a good job of summarizing what the lore is, it's a little deeper than that. It leaves me with a few questions. Why are they there? Why this island? Why are they looking for the new race of perfect human? So, in order to answer these questions, I dust off my journalism degree and I put it to good use. So, I scour countless Reddit forums and I take a look at pretty much all of the wiki pages, and I find out the main source of lore is actually going to be from the previous game, Immortal Soul Black Survival. For those that don't know, Eternal Return was actually a spin-off of Immortal Soul. Immortal Soul was originally a phone game, then brought over to PC, and this game is more of a point-and-click survival game. So between all of my resources, this is kind of my summary of the Eternal Return lore, and it's kind of crazy. So let's start with the early years. So the first account we have is research starts in 1917. And what research is it? There's a research facility amongst a war where they are researching modification of genes in test subjects to create immortal bodies, hence the name Immortal Soul. This research was a result of hundreds of years of scientific study previous to these researchers. War is important here because this is how they're getting a steady supply of human test subjects, and you heard that right, they are testing on humans. So fast forward 11 years, they can finally stabilize cells. What this means is the recovery speed is hundreds of times faster than normal humans. In future diaries, it's explained these recovery times are even faster when resting mentally and physically. That makes sense, which is why in Eternal Return you recover health so fast by sitting down and resting. They thought they did it, they thought they had the immortal body, but along the research they ran into a mishap where an immortal child shot themselves. They learned things like brain damage would leave with mental disorders and they couldn't recover. Alongside suffocation, certain diseases, and removing organs from the body, they weren't quite immortal test subjects. And then a few years later, the war stops, funding goes down the toilet, alongside their steady stream of human test subjects, and things aren't looking too great. This leads us to Project Hephaestus. I'm going to be butchering names throughout this entire video. They don't give many verbal pronunciations. But there are many passionate researchers on the team, so passionate in fact they offer up their children for Project Hephaestus. They ran experiments and found out that vital force, or VF, was present in 4 test subjects who were named the Charities. The 158 other test subjects were disposed of. They don't explain how the scientists were introduced to the concept of VF, but I assume it was from some of the news articles that first identified dead creatures that appear to be a pterodactyl, which was found in modern times. And then alongside that, there was a ruby bracelet that was said to have a beetle inside it, and it was alive for centuries. The only thing was, when it was removed from the VF bracelet, it instantly disintegrated. So there's a ton of info on the VF, which seems to be the key to immortality and the amplification of the test subjects' bodies. So here's a little crash course. VF is an unknown energy that is widely available in our natural environment. I kind of like to think of it as a form of hormone from JoJo's. The issue is only a minority of people have VF receptors, which allow you to exploit VF. So far, the way it manifests with the receptors are in physical, blast, and in manipulations. It can show up in different ways depending on the individual's personality or maybe the environment they grew up around. For example, for a physical VF manifestation, you might see Lee Dai-Lin's agility and dexterity greatly improve, but for someone like Nikki, it's all about power and strength. Then there might be someone who's in the middle ground of the two, like Hun Woo. Blast manifestations would be discharging or releasing energy. I think the easiest example for this would be Ava. And then manipulation manifestations is controlling one's body, other people, or even objects. And this can include controlling the shape of the object. This would explain why Adela is dropping giant chess pieces on your head. So back to the story. War is likely to break out and happen again. Being able to rapidly regen soldiers would be a pretty insane buff, so in attempts not to be targeted by any of the military, they moved to a remote location, which is known as Lumia Island, Eternal Return's current map. There, they use a disguise as a geological research center. 40 years pass, and all of a sudden, it's 1978. There isn't a lot of progress on the research. Most of the research is being held up by the mysteries of the human brain. The island, however, was dramatically decreasing in population due to younger people moving into the city. Alongside that, the island also increasingly became more foggy, which would explain the fog of war effects while playing. Now, let's fast forward to modern times, shall we? So, in 1993, there's a new director elected. Angelica. She looks like a teen and was one of the 4 charities in the 30s. So she's pretty much one of the Immortals. But even though her appearance is of a teen, she knows what she's doing. She gets a lot of wealthy and powerful investors on board, and the research dramatically picks up pace. Since she is the appearance of a teen, Dr. Orlando, one of her colleagues, does all the press and is the face of the org. The issue is they have a mysterious falling out and he leaves. This was a quote in his memo of departure to Angelica. Angelica, I just can't agree with you. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's because I am mortal. It is my limitation, and you as an immortal will never understand my fear. We will never understand each other. Then she just sends out a memo, may God light her way. I don't know what the hell that means, but it is widely hinted at she has motives outside creating an immortal body. So 2001 rolls around and they clear the island completely. They use their disguise as a geological research center to announce a volcanic emergency and require all the evacuation of citizens, which leaves the island to themselves. By 2006, they have the island ready for test phase 1, where they install CCTVs, audio equipment, and all sorts of things thanks to the investors. That would explain why consoles are appearing around this random island and why you can hear the announcers in-game. This first test is a little fucked though. The test consisted of killing a test subject and then bringing them back to life. This cycle of life and death led to stress and trauma of survivors remembering what it felt like to die. The trauma and stress led to the survivors fighting back. For the most part, the survivors were dealt with by Mr. Mijai and other emergency cautions. It's said that they exploited VF to their advantage to fight them off during this assault. This brings us up to 2014, which is pretty much when Black Survival released. Internally, there is a discussion on whether or not to resume experimentation. Angelica values the process over results and wants stability and safety, while Ursha, her deputy research director, fights for the end justifies the means and they should take risks for the results. And it's worth mentioning she is also one of the 4 charities. Magi and Maxime, who is the current face of the organization filling Orlando's role, side with Ursula, and the experimentations continue at last. This time, a little bit different. While Test 1 was more set out to study how VF can make the body immortal, Test 2 is more of the application of VF. To study this, they create a game, one that is survival of the fittest, where the last survivor wins. Kinda Hunger Game-esque. This time, things are a little different. They have found a way to erase memories of the test subjects after they've participated in the trial. So, say someone goes out, dies somewhere in Lumia Island, they'll revive them, and upon revival, they're only going to remember things they came in with prior to doing the test. Of course, there are still going to be victims of the first test that are still lurking around the game. Dr. Wickeline, for example, was a part of those first tests, and she assists and takes care of test subjects now, which they see as useful, but she's lost a bit of her mind and she's obsessed with VF, so it kind of makes sense defeating her would give you a damage buff since she hoards so much VF. Alongside that, it's also noted that Jackie is also from those first tests, but the difference is she was already a serial killer akin to Jack the Ripper, so she might have memory of the first trials, but she's already kind of insane, so things are okay. Other things implemented are restricted zones. They'll give a warning and they'll be killed by a reactive substance if they don't leave those zones. This is for the purpose of controlling tempo for the experiments. Of course, the survivors who do die to them will be regenerated as always. They have pages on how the regeneration works alongside the VF, but long story short is they have these bracelets on composed of specific cells they call Arch. A cells, R cells, C cells, H cells. These cells can repair wounds, replace limbs, or even remake organs that were removed from survivors. All that matters is that the brain stays intact. Another fun piece of trivia that was revealed to me is that the care packages being sent down to Lumia Island were intended for the people working in the research center. Weird that some are getting armor, but it kind of makes sense when you get a box full of Choco Pies. So that is how Eternal Return began. But there's a little bit more. So let's fast forward to the future. The game has been running for a little bit, but alongside the main project, they're working on a few side projects, one including synergy with VF and machines. This was tested on an upcoming survivor from Eternal Return, Ekion. This is kind of why his theme is more mechanical than other players. On that note, a project inspired from Ekion caused researchers to test VF on androids, and this is why Alpha and Omega are on the island. They're pretty much their test subjects that they can control and experiment with as they please. Finally, the most recent development in the lore is similar to the rebellion of test subjects in 2008. In 2019, they had to shut down the test subjects once again because there was once again another uprising. Shutting down the test subjects could cause permanent damage, so they don't really like to resort to that. But they learned the subjects have 3 stages of enragement, the third being Scylla, which is now under study. Along all their research, they are met with some resistance. This is from a secret intelligence organization called Erebos. I couldn't find much info on them, but what you want to know is they want to stop Agalia's research. They also are likely founded by Orlando, who had the falling out, and Alex is probably somehow involved because Intel says he snuck onto the island as a spy. So that's pretty much it for Eternal Return's lore. Every character has their own backstories that go a lot more in depth than what is on the Eternal Return game page. If you want to learn more about those, I'll link a Google Doc made by the community, and maybe you guys will enjoy that. Other than that, hopefully you guys enjoyed. I'll be live on Twitch right now, as always, recording a new video on there, but thanks for watching. Peace out, Girl Scout.